fellow citizens, comrades, and countrymen and women, greetings from exile in Toronto, Canada. This is where Uhuru and his tyrants have marooned me since February 7th. Today, I would like to speak about the critical issues facing the country, Kenya, and the way forward. How are we going to confront the problems that are facing Kenyans? What are the mechanisms that we are going to adopt? And what are we going to use as solutions to the problems? Number one, the problems facing Kenya today are not problems of today. They date back to 1963. I know many of you would not want to be reminded of history, but history is like the compass of life. It's like somebody sailing in the deep seas and they don't have a compass. It's most likely they will capsize, the boat will capsize, and the sailor will die because the sailor does not have direction of where he or she is coming from and where he or she is heading. He or she would not know where the big waves are coming from or going. He or she would not know where the islands are or any other treacherous things in the deep seas. So history is critical, and it is important for Kenyans to be very, very conscious of their history. So what is the history? How does it form? How does it inform us in understanding our current circumstances? And how do we deal with the problems facing us? Number one, the original mistake was made by the so-called forefathers, particularly Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, in calling Kenyatta the second God and saying that without Kenyatta, we could not have freedom. We could not have independence. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga made a very fatal mistake in 1963. He basically gave power to Jomo Kenyatta, or Johnston Kamau as he then was known, and believed that because the Mau Mau had shed blood in the struggle for independence, the Kikuyu elite should assume power before everyone else. And of course, on reflection, now we know part of the strategy was to ensure that the ambitious, the genius Tom Mboya did not become the first Kenya's president. That is history. He made Jomo Kenyatta president. Jomo Kenyatta, having been a deceptive conman, a person who spent 15 years in London and its environs as a gardener, there was nothing much he did in Europe for which anybody can write home about. So he worked as a gardener for some white colonialists and then came back. The British cleaned him up and made sure he became the first president because they knew they could use him. And they knew that African leaders who are greedy, who are deceptive, who have no clear ideological anchor, at least no progressive, no revolutionary genes in their bloods, would be safe to continue with their divide and rule, so that Africa could be carved up, Kenya could be carved up, one community or ethnic group could be put against the other, and they can continue to exploit the precious metals, the minerals, the oil, our resources for their benefit and not for our benefit. And that they would do so with a few elites whose primary intention is to enrich themselves and to help the the ex-colonialists. So that was Kenyatta. He's the one who planted the seed of corruption, the theft of public resources, the inability of leaders and institutions set up for governance to take care of the citizens of the republic. That instead of providing housing, instead of providing quality education and quality health care for all Kenya's citizens, the money and the resources would be used to enrich a few, a tiny group of people at the top, whose main intention is just to perpetuate that culture of impunity. And to do that, you need to purport, entrench, and choreograph divisions between communities. You need to be able to tell the Kikuyus that the Luos are bad because they are uncircumcised. You need to tell the Luos that the Kikuyus are bad because, quote unquote, they are thieves, but only Kenyatta is stealing and his coteries. You need to be able to say that other communities are lazy. You need to be able to say other communities are small and therefore not important. You need to be able to erase the national identity of the Kenyan citizen so that the Kenyan does not view his brother or sister as a fellow citizen that are in the same condition as they are, so that they don't fight together to liberate themselves from that condition. So the seed of corruption goes hand in hand with the seed of tribalism as mechanisms of divide and rule that were introduced in Africa by the British and that were perpetuated by Kenyatta and later on Moi, followed by Kibaki, and now Kenyatta, Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, Raila Odinga, Gideon Moi, and the rest of the KANU orphans are one and the same thing, just two sides of the same coin. Yes, we admit that some of them joined later on into the pursuit of the gravy train. Ruto joined later than the others, but he's trying to catch up. Raila joined later than the others, but he's been busy trying to catch up. They are not different. Why do I say they are not different? On August 8th, 2017, a serious major crime was committed against the Kenyan people. An election was stolen. And instead of the thief succumbing to the dominant will of the people, the majority, he turned his guns on the people, mowed them down in their thousands, maimed them, and has now tried to turn Kenya into a one-party state. They are almost succeeding. And to be able to divert our attention from what they did, the fact that an election was stolen and the servers have not been opened and the IBC has not been transformed and restructured, and that the culture of election theft is being institutionalized so that a few people can meet around a conference table and decide who is going to succeed who for the next 50 or 100 years. They have now come up with the mythical bridges to nowhere, a choreographed PR stunt to confuse the people, so that the people, having been zombified and confused by this choreography, can now focus on the so-called fight against corruption. It's a decoy. It's a subterfuge. There is no fight against corruption. The NIS, the National Intelligence Service, which Uhuru has said is going to conduct the so-called forensic audit on the lifestyles of the so-called leaders, is answerable to Uhuru directly, and then Matiang'i, and then, of course, the Director General of the NIS, who is Uhuru's employee. So essentially what it means is that they are going to target their political enemies, finish them, so that they can cement this dynastic, elite, unjust system in perpetuity. We must say no. The contamination of food did not start yesterday with sugar. It has been going on for years. That is why a lot of Kenyans are dying of cancer, because most of the maize stuff, the corn, is contaminated. The sugar is contaminated. The salt is contaminated. The water is contaminated. Most of the drinking stuff, like juice and the rest, are laced with materials that are not good for human consumption. The drugs that are sold in your drugstores, most of them are unsafe. You don't know who manufactured them. You don't know when they expired. You don't know which one is genuine and which one is not, because KRA is not working. Not just KRA, the Kenya Bureau of Standards is collapsed. There is no institution of state and government that is functional anymore. The EACC is dead. It's worse than a monkey. It's not just a toothless dog, because even a toothless dog can bark. The EACC is a monkey. It cannot bark because monkeys don't bark. So it would never bite because it's not a dog. So the EACC is completely dead and compromised. The police are in the back pocket of Uhuru Kenyatta, the entire police force. That is how come Justice Odunga convicted Matiang'i and Boynet and Kihalangwa and Kinoti and fined them 200,000 shillings each, which means they are all convicted criminals and they should not be occupying public office, but they still occupy public office. These are the people Uhuru is telling us will enforce his order and will fight corruption. Whereas Matiang'i is reputed to have stolen 3.5 billion Kenya shillings in the Ministry of Education and is involved, deeply involved, in the Ruaraka land scandal. And he has not resigned. We are not even going to start speaking about Uhuru and the Muhoho clan and how much they have looted since they took power in 2013. Because you know that the bombing of Westgate was staged. And now the Kenyatta family have bought Westgate. You know that the Delamere family lost their farm in Naivasha because they killed the only heir to the Delamere family, and they have taken the entire land. You know that they have killed the KCC, the milk producing parastatal for the people of Kenya, and are now trying to hook up children on Brookside milk. Not Brookside milk. And this was the whole deal with Raila Odinga. Open up the markets, get 50 billion in your pocket, strangulate the NRM, export Miguna to Canada, turn Kenya into a one-party state zombified under Uhuru Kenyatta, singing Kanu Juu, Juu, Juu Kabisa. So this so-called fight against corruption is fake. It is as fake as the Ngoroko war that Moi started against a non-existent insurgency in the 80s. It is as fake as the Musaliti song against Charles Njonjo in 1982. It is as fake as all the so-called coup attempts that have been planned against dictators around Africa. How do we fight it? Where do we start? The first thing we must reject Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, and Raila Odinga, and all their surrogates trying to say that they mean well for Kenya. They don't mean well for Kenya. They are the problems for which Kenya must clean itself from. So we must get rid of them. And we must get rid of the system that have perpetuated them in positions of public prominence and power and privilege. How do we get rid of them? We have to organize. We have to organize on clear ideological platforms. The clear ideological platforms have to be for liberation. The entire liberation of the Republic of Kenya. And we have to do this in a disciplined fashion. We cannot do it in a factional way. It is not going to be a struggle of the Luos against Kikuyus. It's not going to be the Kisis and the Luyas. It's going to be all of us, as Kenyans, as patriots, who believe that social justice is the only system that we must institutionalize based on merit. Kenyans must be able to grow wealth based on their merit, based on their innovation, based on their hard work, based on their creativity, based on their integrity. It is not going to be based on the fact that somebody inherited money from his or her family. It's going to be hard, productive work. And there is no way that hard work will produce wealth and will produce prosperity and will produce social justice if the people who have gained and are institutionalizing the unjust system remain in power. So as NRM, we are organized around the National Revolutionary Movement of Kenya. But other people must organize as patriots around whatever movements they deem appropriate. As long as it is progressive, as long as the aim is to liberate Kenya from these agents of confusion, exploitation, and oppression, and as long as the end game is social justice and a merit-based society governed by the rule of law, and as long as we don't replicate the problems of today and the past, and as long as power does not vest in the hands that are not legitimate, like now, the people holding power are illegitimate. They are illegitimate because they did not win an election. They are illegitimate because they killed Kenyans who are opposing them. They are illegitimate because they are forcing me to stay in exile, whereas I should be back in Kenya struggling like everybody else. I know Kenyans have been shouting, Miguna, come back to Kenya. When are you coming back? I did not travel out of Kenya. I was kidnapped, abducted from my own house. My Kenyan passport, which is a valid Kenyan passport, was taken away from me and destroyed by the same people now shouting, Miguna, come back to Kenya. Or their slave masters. I was detained and then exiled forcefully after being tortured. When I tried to come back on March 26th, they again did the same thing and did even worse. They sedated me. These are egregious human rights violations that nobody should be able to tolerate. It's not whether you like me or not. You don't have to like me. You don't have to like my opinion. You don't have to like how I look. You don't have to like my community. You don't have to like the way I speak. You don't have to like my dictum. What you do have to like is that we all must obey court orders. We must operate within the rule of law. We must obey and uphold human rights. We must operate within the ambits of the Constitution. And we must, I underline this, we must uphold democratic principles, which means that whoever wins an election in a free, fair, and credible election must get power. Why did I swear Raila in? A lot of people have been asking. If now I'm criticizing him. I did not swear Raila in because I liked him. I did not swear Raila in because I was related to him. I did not swear him in because he paid me. I did not swear him in because I stood to gain anything from him. I swore him in pursuit of electoral justice because he had won an election. I would have sworn anyone. I would have sworn Deda. I would have sworn Ekuru Ekot. I would have sworn anybody else in Kenya if they had won an election, notwithstanding my disagreements with them. Maraga did not swear Uhuru in because he likes Uhuru, because Uhuru is related to him, because Uhuru paid him. He swore Uhuru in because he believed Uhuru won an election. As dishonest and as misplaced that might be to a lot of people, including me. But that's what he did. Nobody has ever told Maraga that because he swore Uhuru in, He cannot make judgments or rule against Uhuru if Uhuru goes before him in a court of law that he presides over. So the point is this: we must be able to transform our idiosyncratic feelings, our individual subjective feelings for or against people. That's what justice is. And I'm a believer in justice. So I would do it again 1,000 times. And if it was a crime, the only option for those in power is to take Miguna to court. Charge him, try him, let's see if he's convicted, try to punish him in court. That's the rule of law. But they can't take me to court because they know they are wrong. Other people have jumped into the fray of claiming that Miguna is not a citizen. Did they just discover that yesterday? I was in Kenya in 2002 and I voted as a citizen. I was in Kenya in 2007 and I voted as a citizen. I even tried to vie in Kenya in 2007. I was a registered voter in 2013, even though I did not vote. I voted both as a candidate and as a registered voter in 2017. They never disbarred me or barred me from voting. The EACC cleared me. The IBC cleared me. The Higher Education Loans Board cleared me. The Universities Commission, Commission cleared me. All the government agencies cleared me, including the police that are now harassing me. I was cleared by the DCI as having no criminal record. I don't have a criminal record, unlike many of these people. So the bottom line is this: we are not going to allow distractors. We are not going to allow malicious people. We are not going to allow choreographed propaganda to deflect us, to take us away, to undermine and sabotage our focus for the national good. So my appeal to Kenyans is to reject Uhuru Kenyatta's PR exercises of quote-unquote lifestyle audits, to reject Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga's mythical bridges to nowhere, to reject William Ruto, the rapacious thief, a man stealing to catch up with the Mois and the Kenyatas and the Odingas and the Robias and the Michukis and the Njega Karumes and the Muhohos. He's trying to catch up with the thieves. These are the families that have destroyed the country. These are the families that are selling us poisoned sugar. These are the families who are trying to poison our children so that they are born deformed. Because pregnant women now taking mercury will give birth to deformed children. Some of them will have lifetime challenges. And so they are zombifying a community, a whole society, in order to perpetuate their selfish interests. Now, like they did it in the Philippines against Marcos, the citizens rose up and overthrew Marcos. I challenge Kenyans to do the same. The same way the Burkinabe did it against Blair Compaore. Blair Compaore was chased out of Ouagadougou by 350,000 people. Kenyans can do that. The same way the Ukrainians did it during the Orange Revolution. The same way that the Ethiopians did it recently by taking down a dictator who had inherited a dictator. You can take it down. You can take down tyranny and despots by simply showing up on the streets in large numbers. You don't even have to bear arms. You don't have to bear arms. You just show up in huge, large numbers. 1 million to 5 million will take down Uhuru Kenyatta, will take down William Ruto, will take down Raila Odinga. These people must go home. And then once they go home, we have to be able to recover our stolen assets and wealth that they stole, billions, trillions of them. Then we have to have restitution. They must pay interest on what they stole. Then they have to serve jail time. That way, we have a clean break with the past. If we are going to paper things over, If we are going to roll over and talk about artificial peace and reconciliation and say that we are forgiven and forgotten criminals, our society will never be cleaned up. It will be another cycle of thieves, another cycle of despots, another cycle of tyrants. We cannot go through that again. Enough is enough. I am calling upon Kenyans of goodwill, patriots and comrades to organize. Don't agonize. Stop wailing. Stop complaining. Get into your neighborhoods. Convert 20 people each day. Tell them that this is important. Then on a day assigned by us, the revolutionaries, show up on the streets in large numbers. Let's take them down. Viva!